yeah, life, so you can start.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to all those who are on this session. I'm Ravikant Sabnavis. I'm the co-chair of the Startups Subcommittee for the CII Western Region. So on behalf of the CII Western Region, Ninad Skarpe, who is the chair, and myself, a very warm welcome to all of you. What I'm really going to talk about is what this session is, these sessions are all about, actually. The startup buzz is something that we kicked off in the month of May this year. Every Thursday, 1700 hours, with a view to actually, time, set your watches. We have the startup buzz session where we've had some very interesting people, who are either moderating or as guests. We've been enjoying the last 3 odd months. So we would encourage you to come be a part of these sessions every Thursday, 1700 hours. And without further ado, I'm going to very briefly introduce to you whom we have on screen: Amit, who's moderating this session, and Tintisha, who's going to speak about what she does. Folks, over to you and the audience. And just a housekeeping thing, please keep sending in your questions as the conversation opens, and they'll sort of take them along the way or towards the end. Over to you, Amit and Tintisha.
Thank you, Ravi. Much appreciate. And it was really succinct in terms of setting the tone for why we are here and how people can benefit. Hello, everyone. My name is Amit Vashisht, and I am the founder of a company called as GALF, full form being Get Alive, more popularly known for our brand name, mygalf.com. We are an active lifestyle brand. I'm also an investor in startups. That's not the subject of the real substance that's going to come in today. The real substance and the persona today is Tintisha Sagar, the co-founder for THAP, the Happiness Project. As a starter for two, we would like to say that we'll try to keep the conversation for 25 to 30 minutes because we want the participants to have a real time interaction opportunity with you, Tintisha. So humbly so, all the participants, kindly make sure that you're on mute till the time we are able to finish this interaction, and we'll be really welcoming you to ask questions to Tintisha once we are done with our questionnaire, right? Okay, on that note, Tintisha, welcome to this wonderful interaction evening today, titled From Burnout to Breakthrough. Clearly, while the intention of this was to target more like target more the founders, the Real Mental Health Playbook for Founders. But I understand that the audience today includes students, founders, established professionals. So, hey, we will try to keep it as diversified as possible. Over to you, Tintisha, if we can possibly have a bit of a glimpse of who you are and what got you to a stage that you were compelled enough to start the Happiness Project.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Amit, for that very, very nice welcome. And a very good evening to everyone tuning in today. So my name is Tintisha Sagar, and I am one of the co-founders of the Happiness Project. For short, I'll be referring to it as TAP, right? So my sister and I co-founded this company together. Before we started on this journey, I was actually an investment banker in New York and London. And after that, I kind of had a stint in my family business, which is in healthcare. So we have a chain of hospitals. I helped start our mother and child wing and then expanded into the Middle East. After that, I got into education, where we run a university and we kind of design the curriculum as well as the student life for our students. So incidentally, the idea for TAP came up about when we were doing our education bit. So what happened was in 2020, we all know COVID hit, and that kind of really just changed the way people lived and thought about, literally every single thing. One of the things that became very, very apparent to us as we were coming out of COVID was that a lot of students were beginning to show signs of mental trauma, so to speak, right? If I can put it that way. And when I say mental trauma, it's more like suicidal ideation or feelings of not being good enough or just general isolation, so to speak. So what happened was in my campus in Bangalore, a couple of students committed suicide, and we were actually uh, very surprised that that happened because we did have counselors on campus. We did have infrastructure to help them deal with any sort of mental stress. What we realized after those events was that people weren't really taking advantage of these mental health facilities because of one very rampant idea around mental health, right? So it has a very negative connotation. There's a very negative stigma for about mental health. Now, for example, if you're a student and some of your friends find out that you're seeking mental health, they probably think a little bit less of you, right? They might even go so far as to say something's wrong with you, and that's why you're seeking help. Now, that is not a very pleasant thing for an 18 or a 19-year-old to hear, right? So that's when we realized that the way to get them to access the help that they need was to anonymize the whole thing. So TAP actually started out as an online platform where students could seek help with counselors. And eventually we realized that there was a lot of pieces missing in the healthcare infrastructure, in the mental healthcare infrastructure. And we started building out TAP as a online platform for not just taking, taking care of a mental illness when that happens, but actually preventively engaging in mental resilience. So we're not just about what happens after you realize you need help. We're all about making sure you don't actually even reach that point. So that being said, TAP is all about making healthcare accessible, making sure you're accountable to it, and most importantly, we make it stigma-free.
Lovely, excellent. And that's such a noble way to start in terms of, learning from your own life experiences, even though my heart goes out for those families who were impacted because of those incidents. I have been a witness to them myself in my surroundings for the last 4 or 5 years, and it still continues to happen. It is important to get the elephant to the table very quickly since we have kind of got only 30
Right.
minutes of
Right.
time span, right? I understand that uh, you know, uh, taboo, while is a more aggravated format of it, the very idea that, people even realize that their mental health is being impacted, right? This is currently an act of denial in India,
That's
right?
right.
For two reasons. One is that most people are not even aware what are the stages or symptoms that can qualify to be say, hey, my mental health is being impacted. I've been in that stage myself, and gladly so. When I was impacted by stress and anxiety, and consequently it was impacting my physical health, I raised an alarm and I raised my hand, say, hey, I'm being impacted, I need help. Right? Though, yes, there was a noise within the family and outside too. But would you want to, Tantisha, kind of give a brief glimpse to people around what are the key indicators that people should look out for and understand that there could be initial symptoms of mental health being impacted?
Right, sure. So, like you mentioned, denial is a very big part of um, admitting to even yourself that you have an issue, right? So, one of the things that you want to look out for is you begin to lose interest in a lot of things that really brought you a lot of joy, right? And you begin to withdraw from people. You begin to avoid things that you would normally do. Like, for example, if looking at work emails excited you as a founder before, you will find yourself saying that, you know what, I'll look at it an hour from now, or I look at it like 2 hours from now, things like that. So you're constantly trying to get away from things that bring you joy is one of the biggest sort of indicators that, you know, there's something going on and you really need to take a look at what's happening under the hood.
Okay. Anything that you see which are more like a biomarker symptoms, anything that people should look out for, given that stress, anxiety, or mental health impact has direct correlation to your biomarkers or physical health too?
Right, absolutely. Now, and this is something that TAP is also working on it, and it's in the pipeline. Is we take a look at your hormones, right? Like for example, way before even physical symptoms appear on your body, your cortisol levels, for example, increase when you're stressed out or when you're anxious. So Now, there is really no way to do this without actually going and drawing your blood and getting a test and so on and so forth. So that's the way that you actually get to the root of the problem before the problem actually appears. Now, there's also other physical symptoms is, you begin to feel a lot of musculoskeletal pain, for example, right? Because when you hold in a lot of stress, that kind of affects the way you move as a body, because it your mind really impacts your physical sense as well. Some of the other things that you might see is that you're constantly, you don't feel rested even though you've slept really well, right? You have an inability to focus, right? So it's little things that you would think that you're just having an off day, but it's not really an off day. It's your body asking for help, and then we tend to ignore that.
Okay. Yeah, good. And I think that's a clearly I see some of the comments coming in, and I'm kind of opting to ignore some of them because people need to be patient to hear the respected panelists as the agenda unfolds. So you mentioned about what are the key triggers, in terms of people or realizing what the mental health issue is, and also some of the key indicators. You're
Mhm.
talking about biomarkers. We also understand from industry that
Right.
in most of the cases when stress, anxiety, and kind of impacts the mental health,
Mhm.
there is a direct impact on vitamin D levels or vitamin B12 levels too. Any
Right.
kind of a specific burnout symptoms that you would like to make the listeners aware of, because a lot of people keep hearing about burnout and they
Mhm.
think that it is a lot of work,
Mhm.
right? And often it is not work, it is about various other things. So what are the burnout symptoms and what are the things that people need to look out for?
Okay. So, like I mentioned earlier, the biggest sign is denial. You know that something's wrong, but then you feel like you don't want to address it, right? Now, a lot of the times burnout gets confused with stress, right? Because everybody goes through stress. But what happens is stress is actually very event related or item related, right? You could be stressed about an event, about a deliverable that needs to get done soon, etc. But what burnout is this constant cumulative stress that has it's chronic in nature, and it has just accumulated so much that you're unable to function as optimally as you could, right? So some of the signs that you look out for that you're actually hitting burnout is that um, you sort of begin to rely very heavily on, let's say, caffeine as a crutch to kind of help you focus, and then you sort of realize that you're becoming very distracted again. So again, I'm reiterating on what we said earlier. It's that all your wins begin to really feel hollow, and nothing really
Yeah.
excites you anymore,
Mhm.
and you feel irritated, you're withdrawn, your team begins to see a side of you that nobody really wants to be around, things like that, and it's not just on any given day, it's every day, and you're constantly tired, and that is really, like, the way you kind of understand that burnout is just it's there. There's really no other way to put it. It's just there, and it just never goes away. That's the kind of tiredness you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Given the fact that I come from the industry and reckoning with what you said, I think people need to look out for that being over anxious about anything and not having patience to
Mhm.
even wait for things to happen is also a sign of stress. And, also how you behave, let's say in traffic, how
Mhm.
you behave in day-to-day activities, right? Uh, for every action that you are doing,
Mhm.
that could be an initial symptom of stress and anxiety,
Right.
right? I understand from our past conversations and what you were talking about today in terms of students. So typically, your client segments are ranging between 20 to 30 years. Am I right?
Yeah, around 18 to 30 years old.
18 to 30, right? Interestingly, a lot of startup founders also come from this segment, right?
That's
Is there any trend that you have seen particularly in the startup founder segment too?
right. So in the startup founder segment, if I have to extrapolate from what we have done so far, it's that there's this imposter syndrome, right? It's kind of like you fake it till you make it. But that is to the external world is the imposter syndrome. When you internalize it, that's what triggers burnout, right? So you're kind of always wondering, am I good enough? Do I really know what I'm doing, etc.? And this is something that all founders go through, right? There is no map. Every journey is different, and you begin to second guess and things like that. So it's just it's occupational hazard, I would say.
True, true, true. And also the fact that a lot of these founders were academically very good, maybe IITs, IIMs, or schools or respective institutes, and it has got no necessarily correlation with what they are seeing in the out and the real world.
Right,
Just being able to code, just being able to create a platform, or just being able to create a product or a service does not mean that there is a commercial success to it.
right,
Right.
right.
So, how do you explain that? Give me a case study where, let's say, someone extremely good in studies, extremely good in that kind of a cocooned world, and when they face the real world, where the commercial success does not happen, because startup, as you said, is a real time-consuming journey,
Right.
right? I'm not a big fan of those cash burn organizations anyway. So, what has been your observation, and what is your typical recommendation to those student transitioning to startup founder stage? What are the things to look out for and manage it proactively rather than reactively?
Okay, right. So if you're a young founder and also like an early stage founder, right? So the way you approach things are very different from a more seasoned founder, so to speak. So the things that younger founders need to look out for is that you are not going to see that, that hockey stick rate of progress that you think that you've learned in business school, that you're expecting that you put your product out there and it's going to be a super success, etc. So there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, and I'm sure our audience knows exactly what we're talking about. There's a lot of um, uh, sleepless nights. There's a lot of hard work that goes into it that people don't equip you for when you are studying, right? So you don't have a lot of guide rails to fall on. You're kind of just out there in the world trying to make sense of how do I get this product out there and make sure that it turns into the success that you can. Now, when that doesn't happen in the timeline that you think that it's going to happen, you begin to doubt yourself a lot. And that kind of spirals out into how your team, I mean, you begin to, your point of questioning yourself affects your team as well. And then they begin to question. And it kind of just, it's like you're circling the train. So that really is what happens. And so how founders should sort of deal with it is that I think hustle culture is overrated, right? Founders are always pushing, 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 but I think there's a lot of merit in stepping back from the noise. It's okay to take a couple of hours in a week just to sort of bring your mind back to what's important, and then slow down. Hustle culture is great on Instagram, but in reality, your mental health is your company's biggest asset. So if you're not protecting that, then you've kind of just lost the game.
I'm so glad that you mentioned about this whole hustle culture and also the Instagram thing, not demeaning any kind of a specific platform from any of the respected companies. Given the fact that we've got nearly 2.2 million customers on our platform, we did a survey once and got a response from thousands of founders and young entrepreneurs, right up to the age of 45. And interestingly, what you mentioned, came out in that survey result too. There were three trends. People felt that when they were diagnosed and then kind of, they were recuperating, the top three things that they were told which caused them the mental health issue, number one was inactive lifestyle. The fact that they are constantly hustling and sat in front of a computer or debating in rooms, this kind of got them into a very, very inactive lifestyle. The second thing that they kind of brought forward was the whole impact on the musculoskeletal health because of poor posture. So underrated how people are responding to the devices or messages, or even the way they're standing, leaning on the walls, right? The whole postural issues that are emerging in people, because of the musculoskeletal imbalance, was the second biggest thing, more medically. Interestingly, both of them were caused by too much of digital exposure, right? The third biggest trend, which kind of at least came out in our set of audience, was most of these founders, while they were great at the core product or the work, but they were absolutely nervous or not even initiated on financial management, right? The biggest cause was financial distress or lack of knowledge about how to manage organizations well financially, right? So these were the three trends came in, and I want to kind of hear out from you now. Did you observe this thing? And if there is anything like this that you observed, what are the kind of recommendation or remedies that you guys have?
Okay, so I agree with everything that you're saying, right? Because mental health is not just about the mind. It is also about your physical self. It's also about the nutrition that you consume. So at TAP, ironically, coincidentally, one of the things that we do is, when a user logs on to our app and says that, okay, listen, I'm feeling anxious today. I want to know how to address this feeling. So they kind of are given a 2-minute test that kind of tells them whether they are having mild, moderate, or severe symptoms of anxiety, right? And let's just say I fill it out and I'm ranked as severe anxiety. It immediately gives you the option to talk with a therapist, or it also gives you a couple of things that you can do to increase your happy hormones, right? Now, what are these things that you can do to increase your happy hormones? It's as simple as giving you a prompt, asking you to think about a time that you felt truly happy, or just listening to a song that brings out those emotions, those happy emotions in you. So these are like little things that we suggest that instantly kicks in that boost of dopamine. And in addition to just mental stimulation, we also look at the physical part of it as well, right? So we do also suggest a couple of physical activities that you can do. Now, for example, we would ask you, have you been out in the sunshine at all this week? And for most founders, probably not, because you're working from the crack of dawn till midnight. So we say maybe you should go do some sort of physical activity for 30 minutes and then come back and let us know how you felt about it. So it's really important, and a lot of people don't realize this. Physical activity is a very, very good way to actually make sure that you're mentally resilient. So we do emphasize that as well. And of course, there's also the nutrition aspect of it, which is also very important because there are certain foods that you can consume that increase your happy hormones as well, which is a temporary fix, but then it kind of gets you in that first step towards making sure that you're mentally resilient.
Lovely, excellent. And I totally reckon with these recommendations as smart steps, as I call it, for people to keep their mental health in check. Also on the financial bit, I highly recommend that people kind of have a true sense of how much money is in a wallet. And even if they're taking money from investors, they use it as their own money, that which they do not generally like to waste. People tend to over leverage themselves, overspend in a startup environment, and then kind of get into a mess. Oh, our model did not really work. Models don't work overnight or even in a year or two. Sometimes it takes time. So, it would be a good kind of a reference point. So clearly, the activities that you mentioned, Nitisha, there could be a time when people could reflect on many aspects as to how the activities need to happen. I also understand that from the market research that there was a comparative analysis done through a survey where people were told that if we were given a 10,000 rupees share of wallet, right, to spend over the weekend, would you want to spend on entertainment or personal health? And in 90% of the cases, people responded favorably to entertainment. I would not guess, second guess as to what entertainment would mean for people, right? What is your observation? How comfortable are Indians as such, or founders, because the captive audience we have is Indians, are they open to have a share of wallet to invest in personal health, more specifically mental health once they have identified, and not just physical health, even though there is a direct correlation between a personal and mental health?
Right. So what we've typically seen is that people are very unwilling to first even accept the fact that mental health requires attention, right? So, and I like to give an example. For example, when you actually enroll in a gym, you're not going to the gym because, you broke your leg and you're trying to fix it. You're going to the gym so that you can work on your legs, strengthen your muscles and your bones. So you will not probably have, like a bad knee. Now, in the same way, this is what we're trying to say you should do with mental health. We're asking you to build mental health resilience, not because there's something wrong with you, but we're trying to get you to make it a habit so that you become more resilient, right? So further down the line, if something were to happen, it's probably not going to be as bad as it was if you didn't know how to manage your mental health. So that's really the position that we operate from. And unfortunately, in at this time, the willingness for people to spend on mental health is actually very, very poor. But I would like to say that once they actually have been through a therapy session or any sort of mental well-being, it's like a whole 180. They realize the value that it actually brings for their own mind and their peace, and also for the people around them, be it family or even their peers. It is night and day. Like I can even quote an instance where one of our customers wrote to us and they said that I never believed in spending on mental health, and I thought it was just talk to someone and then just forget about it. But I realized that even that small act of talking to someone who's not in your everyday environment helped me alleviate a lot of stress and helped me think better and just be an overall better grounded person. So that's really the value that people don't see, because there's a lot of stigma attached to mental health, and that's really what we're looking at trying to break.
Fantastic, fantastic. Just trying to keep it as people's session and not necessarily interaction between you and I, as much as I'm trying to integrate real time what people are showing as a sentiment. I would directly go to some of the questions that I'm seeing over here. Allow me that liberty. I see that the first question that came in was, how can startups integrate well-being practices into their culture without impacting performance? Now, the first and foremost thing I'd like to say that mental well-being, and there's a case study that was done, I know, and I can name the institution that they did, that any organization that is invested in well-being has typically got anywhere between 4x to 6x productivity increase, right?
Correct.
So clearly integrating well-being practices does not impact performance negatively, but I'll let our respected panelists talk about it in terms of how can that be more seamlessly integrated.
Okay. So one of the things as founders you can do in your respective companies to make sure that mental health resilience is a priority is make sure that people have, first of all, access to mental health care, right? That is, you could have therapists on board, or you can have counselors, or you can, subscribe to TAP, because we essentially do the same exact thing. We provide anonymous, stigma-free mental health care. So if you make it, if it's available, people tend to be a little bit open to it. And more importantly, I think as founders, you should model behavior, right? So if you make it seem like it's okay to do this, take a couple of therapy sessions, talk about it, tell them how much you loved it. And then you can just see how it percolates down your company. And then they realize that, hey, you know what? It's not a bad thing to seek help. It's not a bad thing to want to be mentally resilient. So that's what you can do. Another thing that you could possibly do is gamify this, right? You can gamify the concept of mental health care. You can literally pit departments against each other just to see, how well they're actually going through the motions of everything that's available to them. Are they using the resources? And then kind of gamify the whole thing. But yeah, so that being said, I think the most important way that you can do it is just model that behavior yourself. Because that's
Fantastic. You said it those nicely. Interesting you said about gamification, and as much my, and many other organizations are trying to gamify. There's
right.
also one survey study which said that when you engage people for their own well-being, the most common question that they ask is, what is in it for me to invest in my own well-being, right?
Exactly.
So, there are organizations like yours and ours who are also kind of rewarding people to
Yeah.
be investing in their own health. So,
Yes.
hey, everyone who's kind of still on the edge, you can still be rewarded for taking care of your own
Yeah.
health.
Yeah. I
Right?
mean, I love the way you put it. It's absolutely true. Yeah.
Good. So next question I see, what are the most common mental health struggles you have seen among founders you work with? I understand that you mentioned that briefly earlier, but is there anything quick as a recap or a reckoner that you would like to share?
So again, it's the imposter syndrome, right? It's the imposter syndrome because you're, as a founder, you're always wondering if you're good enough. Is your product good enough? Is everything else going to work out the way it's supposed to be? It's kind of like you fake it till you make it. That's just how the beast works. So that is just one of the trends that we see when they interact with our therapists. On a broader spectrum, there's a lot of self-doubt that's there, and that kind of impacts the way you kind view the world around you. And if you don't address that, it kind of negatively impacts any effort that you will be putting out there. So yeah.
Good. I do have a gentleman who said, can you guys try to stick to the agenda from burnout to breakthrough, the real mental health playbook for founders? My only humble request to the gentleman is that mental health is all about taking baby steps further. One could start with some deep breathing, actually on the call itself. The next one, what do you think it's so difficult for founders to be open about mental health, and how can that change?
Oh, I mean, that's I would say the easiest question, right? Because as founders, we like to believe that we know everything, and that even like the smallest step that you falter means that you're weak. You feel that people perceive that. Um, how do I put this without kind of making it feel dramatic? It feels like if you don't know something or if you're seeking for help, it's the end of the world, right? So that's really what prevents founders from seeking help when they need, because one, they believe that they're over resilient when they're really not. They are human. And second, they believe that asking for help means that they are not capable of everything that they think they are.
I think
So,
it's a brilliantly well narrated one. And my humble addition to it will be that, I was a country head for an investment bank and transitioned into a founder. One
mhm,
of the things that I did very well, of the many things that I didn't do well, was
mhm,
that I set up a right quality of an advisory board at
mhm,
people whom I could go to any moment of time, guards down, and talk over.
mhm.
Right. So I think that's something which really helps founders. And that could be a ready reckoner for most of the founders. You don't need to form a really an advisory board unless until you know how
Right.
to manage it. But find out a set of people whom you can reach out to and open up in front of them with the guards down.
So I just want to add one quick thing to that, is that founders need to really reframe therapy as a strategic advantage, right? In the same way, like you mentioned, that you would hire a mentor or a coach for like a business situation. If mental bandwidth is your biggest asset, right, then protecting it makes good business sense. So you really need to invest in ensuring that your mental health is in top shape at all times.
Good. I do see another fantastic question, and I'm tempted to answer along with you. It says,
Mhm.
what's your go-to self-care ritual that actually works even on your busiest day? They do have an add-on question too, which I will add on right now. Say, how do I manage a guilt-free taking break when my startup is still in survival mode?
Okay. So so I can tell you what I do, and I know for a fact that a lot of founders that I communicate regularly with do, is literally step away. Your business is not going to disintegrate if you take a 30-minute break, right? 30-minute break in 1 week where you do absolutely nothing. You kind of just um I like to call it white space, right? So you're just literally sitting in a space that is not your workplace, that's not your home, because both bring their own types of stress. You're sitting in a neutral space and there is no agenda. You're just sitting with yourself, you're reading a book, or you're just staring off into space if that's what you want to do for those 30 minutes. It's
I
just
agree. I couldn't have
escape.
agreed more. I
Yeah.
learned this art of getting into stillness much later in life.
Hmm.
Couldn't have agreed more.
Yeah.
The other thing which I kind of, recommended earlier in the call too, that a break does not mean necessarily, always going for a 2, 3, 4 hour, 2, 3 days.
Right.
Sometimes it's just about getting into a state of conscious breathing.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of these loop bands. I tend to kind of wear them while I'm sat on desk and
Hmm.
keep moving my legs like that. And I say, this is also my, if I say, uh, uh, being on a break while on the job. Right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
happy if people can look up, say on your website or Instagram, or contact us, and we'll be happy to give them this guidance on that. You need to necessarily not go for a full marathon to be
Right.
taking a break. It could be some baby steps, and more often than not, it is the baby steps, as you were rightly mentioning, Tintisha.
Right. So
Right.
I actually want to add to this as well. So on our app, and I promise you this is not a plug, we do have these mini workouts that we have. So let's say you are feeling not anxious, but you kind of want to see where you're at today. So we have these daily workouts that you can do that are designed to elevate your mood. So, and that takes no more than 5 minutes. So in just literally 5 minutes a day, you're kind of doing like a little bit of a mental reset, or stillness, like you said, and that really, really helps.
Good, good, good. And definitely, it's absolutely within your right to talk about the services that you offer, which can help people. We are
Mhm.
here to create an impact in lives of the people, so you're within your right. There's another question. How do I differentiate between work burnout and just being tired or overworked? Principally, I don't understand this concept of overwork. I just feel that it is mismanagement of time, but I'll leave it on you to really share if there is any kind of a partition, in a sense between these two.
Okay. So it's a really good question, and it's very difficult to answer. So thank you for the question. Basically, when you're burnt out, nothing makes you happy anymore. It's not just about feeling tired. Like literally nothing brings you a sense of accomplishment. Now, let's say, ordinarily, if landing a big client would have been amazing, but your attitude when you're in that burnout phase is pretty much, okay, great, we got this guy. Now let's move on to the next, in the same tone that I just said. It's no more, okay, amazing, let's move on. It's not like that. It's you just feel very depleted. And no matter how much you try to restore yourself by sleeping or caffeinate yourself, etc., you're just hollow and nothing excites you anymore. That's when you know that you've truly hit burnout and you do need to reach out for help.
True, true. I agree with you. I agree with you. And to the respected lady who asked this question, given that I'm a triathlete and at one moment of time I could not run 100 meters and then went on to become an Ironman. In this journey, I realized that a lot of people who were along with me, some of them either burned out, right? And my learning from my athlete life is you get overworked or you feel overworked when you try to achieve too much too soon.
Yeah.
Right. So as an
Yeah.
athlete, it was in my favor to stick to the plan.
Mhm.
Right. Sometimes it does feel that you're not doing enough, and that's fine. Allow yourself that liberty.
Right. Right.
How do I stay emotionally grounded when things aren't going according to the plan? Example, failed funding, losing clients. Well, that's the right of a startup founder to have failed funding and losing clients, right?
Right. So I would say, there are a lot of support groups that are out there that are founder only support groups. And it really helps to have that conversation in there, right? Because you realize that it's not happening just to you. So when you understand that this is just the way the beast is, you're no longer internalizing it and you realize that it's okay. Everybody goes through it and there's a way to cope with it. And a lot of the time, founders are very open in how they deal with it, right? Because they understand it's a journey and nobody's trying to elbow anyone else out. So it's very, very important to be in touch with a circle of people who are doing similar things that you are doing, because then it gives you a lot of clarity in what you're experiencing. And I find that extremely helpful. Support groups
You so beautifully
really
answered
helpful.
actually the next question also, which says, what mindset tools or coping strategies do you recommend during extreme lows like funding rejections or team exits? I think what you mentioned about being part of the community or
Yeah.
startup founders pool is that when you realize over there and say, even the biggest of the big who call
Yeah.
themselves unicorns have failed miserably
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
are still failing miserably.
Yeah.
So, you're not alone. The
Mhm.
idea that you wanted to risk something bigger
Mhm.
is the reason why you're a startup founder. Otherwise, you would have been doing job and a nine to
Exactly.
five or whatever work that
Exactly.
allowed. But hey, best wishes to who asked this question. Let me compliment you. You are extremely courageous to be asking such questions.
Mhm.
Okay. Next one here is, are there workplace practices or small policy changes that promote better mental wellness across teams? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Literally having, so I once went to this company in New York. I can't remember the name, where they had these little pods just as break times. In India, unfortunately, people feel like they need to be seen at work all the time, right? Like any time away from your desk means that you're not productive enough. So as founders, I think creating a culture where you say, take a 5 minute break, it's okay. As long as you finish the task, it doesn't matter if you're sitting at your desk, if you're sitting in a garden somewhere and doing it. Just that ability to disengage when things get a little too much is important. And that's not a big investment. That's literally a pod in a room that already exists. And of course, the other thing is that people, again, stigma is something that's the very big thing. People may not want to walk that pod and sit there, right? So just having the option for them to reach out to someone anonymously, I think makes a big difference in people taking their mental health very
And a very, very close correlation to the next question, which a lady has asked, what are the common personality factors among startup founders that predispose them certain types of mental health stressors? So over to you if you want to answer that, and I'll kind of add on to that my two bits.
I mean, how do you, okay, when you think of a founder, right? The image that instantly comes to your mind is this person who will not take no for an answer, right? So someone who's like that is very competitive, right? And sometimes what happens is that when you're so competitive, you don't want to accept that you can ever lose. right? So that's where that denial stems from. So to answer the question of what kind of personalities kind of predispose you to this, there is no personality that's immune from this. It happens to everyone. It happens to the best of us. So if you're thinking that, okay, maybe something is wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just the way it's built, right? So it happens to everyone.
True. Absolutely, absolutely. And on this personality, I think since personalities are driven by values and behaviors, I think one of the fact that all startup founders must have as a value is a value of respect, right? And it starts with respecting themselves first,
That's right.
right? And also respecting everyone else, including their views and contribution. A lot of times, startup founders tend to start considering themselves as Rambos, right? It is my idea. I know it all, right? And I'll do it.
Yeah.
And they end up being extremely lonely and then eventually not being able to talk to someone else too.
Right.
So just complimenting on what you just mentioned, Tintisha, it's not necessarily about any personality being immune to it. Everyone is, but
Right.
hey, allow the world to come to you.
Right.
Okay, the next one is, how do I communicate mental health needs or burnout to investors without seeming unfit to lead? Very powerful question.
So I would say this, right? Because if investors have been in the game long enough, they understand the value of mental resilience of a founder, right? So for them, if they're not willing to see this as something that's important to you, that's a red flag, right? They're not investing in your company's well-being in the long run. That's kind of a red flag to me. So how do you bring it up? You kind of ask for a reschedule. I know these things don't really go well because they expect you to do it when they want you to, but I would say that if it's genuine enough, I think you should be able to put it forward.
I think if there's anyone who needs the most in terms of the mental health support is actually the investors themselves, because they go through way more stress
Right.
than the founders. And being an investor myself, I understand that.
Yeah.
I also appreciate at least the set of investors that I have interacted with, who are either the peer group or a part of the same community. They are actually appreciative of the startup founders who are most authentic.
Exactly.
They do not like founders who are, hey, everything is perfect and nothing is wrong and I'm going to take care of it, right? They actually want the startup founders to be most authentic. And
Right.
more often than not, they have the toolkits ready to say,
Right.
hey, I think you need help. We are
Right.
happy to offer you help.
Right. And that's and unfortunately, that's something that most people don't realize, that investors actually bring that
Value. Yeah.
ability to be empathetic to your situation, right? So they don't
True.
really realize that. But
True.
I love the way you put that across.
Yes, and the way Santisha just rightly mentioned, stick to your plan, stay authentic. It's all right if there are times when they're disturbing and difficult conversation, but at least you'll have a peaceful night.
Right.
Right. How do I communicate mental health needs? Okay, this is done. How can we balance college deadlines, lectures, and startup tasks without burning out? So, hey, wonderful. Looks like a bright young student who is a startup founder here. So, how do you balance these two worlds? Because they're quite contrasting in
Right.
terms of academic world and the real world.
Right. Well, first off, that's amazing. I love that you're starting so young. That just shows that you have a lot of grit and determination. So congratulations on that. So when it comes, so my company deals a lot of with youngsters who are trying to start on this journey while they're in college. And one of the things that we strongly suggest is have those therapy sessions. You may feel like you don't need them, but talking to a licensed therapist about the pressures that you're under will actually help them give you tools to sort of manage it efficiently. Now, I think a licensed therapist would be a better person to answer this question. But I say the first step is make sure you're talking to someone who's licensed, right? So they will be able to guide you in things. It could be little tools that you can incorporate into like your daily ritual, so to speak. And it actually makes a big difference in how will you be able to handle both studies as well as startup. But amazing. I'm so proud of you for asking this question.
Likewise, and my due compliments. I think it always works is that if you truly understand that you are not solving the world hunger problem, you're solving a specific problem at college and specific problem at at your startup. Ring fence it, because sometimes the temptation leads to you to do too much at every given amount of time. Stick to the plan. as Cynthia rightly mentioned, and seek help from the consultant or the therapist, as she rightly said. How can I draw boundaries between startup time and personal time when everything feels urgent? Almost the same as the previous question, but if you would like to mention anything around that, Cynthia.
Okay, so this again goes back to the importance of being able to step away from everything, right? Because chances are that if you actually take that 30-minute break, you're going to come back with a lot more mental clarity to attack the problem that you are going to have, rather than just trying to
True.
push through it and try to get to the solution. So the answer to that would be is always schedule that white space that I spoke about earlier, because it actually helps you come back with a lot more mental clarity. So that's a good way to address that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's almost like prioritizing what is really something which is important for you at a given moment of time, even though you have a plan. So if
Right.
it is a break which is most important to get that mental clarity, that's true. I may humbly take liberty of adding to what you're saying here, that if you are really, really struggling with startup time and personal time, I highly recommend that you start your day early. Finish off some of your personal things quite early, right? So for example, for me, time in the gym or going for a run or spending time with my wife or my kids, something that I try to do as early as possible, or at least once in a day. And I'm not kind of particularly vindictive to myself that, hey, you didn't do it, so I'm going to crucify you for not doing it. Stop doing that. You are a human being and you better be kind to yourself. So, hey, all the best who asked this question. This is a beautiful question, and thanks for raising it so courageously. What are some recovery rituals or mental resets you recommend after a major setback? Now, that's an important one.
So even before we get to the ritual part of it, like I mentioned before, it is really important to self-reflect, right? To kind of understand what your mental state is. Now, when I say what your mental state is, you have to try to name that feeling. Are you anxious? Are you fearful? Are you feeling isolated? So once you understand the feeling that is kind of anchoring your mental state of mind, it becomes very easy to sort of understand what the next step would be. So once you've named that emotion, the next step would be for example, if you're anxious, there's box breathing, right? So there's box breathing where it is time, there's a certain number of breaths you take and you hold it and then you exhale. Now, a lot of the times when I say this to people, they're like, what is breathing going to do? This is actually used by the US Navy SEALs, and they're under immense pressure at all times. But box breathing for as little as a minute actually brings it forces your body to understand that this is not a flight or fight type of situation, and just calms you down. And then that brings again a lot of clarity as to what your next step would be.
Truly, truly. And that's the whole concept of conscious breathing. And I have been a significantly big beneficiary of that. And thank you so much for insisting about it, Tantisha. There's also something that, I would like to recommend, since that people may want to have a more advanced level of practice. So depends on what is the kind of a setback that you experience, right? So for example, in my case, right, I'll just give one of the, setbacks that I had was losing my father too early to poor health, right? And what I did was oriented myself to reading books like Tough Times Don't Last, Tough Men Do, or going to the hospital and sitting there for, say, a few hours and seeing how other people who are facing crisis are dealing with it. It really helped me understand, get acceptance of the fact that it's not the end to the world, right? Interestingly, that also led a way for me to start up my own venture. So you never know that any crisis, how bad it may appear at a moment of time, could actually end up becoming a purpose of your life. So, hey, look out for that. I'm not necessarily saying that you need to be welcoming too many crises, but hey, at the same moment of time, be open to the idea that your life is what is lying ahead and not what was behind you.
Right.
Okay, the next one to you is, what should a founder do in the first 24 to 48 hours after realizing they're burnt out?
The first 24 to 48 hours, I would say, again, it's as simple as self-reflection, right? Self-reflection is very important, because if you're unable to even name that feeling, then it means that you need professional help, right? So self-reflection is a very important tool, and that's something that we do at TAP as well. It helps it you don't need to know what you're going through. You're trying to identify that feeling. You kind of walk through our protocol. It helps you identify it, and then we give you solutions on how to manage those emotions. So in the first 24 to 48 hours, don't take important decisions. Just step away, take care of yourself first, and then, proceed.
Lovely. Satisha, we are doing really well on time, and can't be happier. It's 5:50, still 10 minutes left. Welcoming more questions. One of the questions that we got in advance was that the startup founders who are a prospect right now to be wanting to open up a startup in a space of well-being, right? Let's say mental well-being, to start with you, right? What is your recommendation to them, given the fact that there is a study which says that not too many startup founders flock behind well-being as much as they flock behind quick delivery or
Right.
IoT or robotics and artificial intelligence driven companies. The
Right.
fact that these are anyway coming into well-beings too, but
Correct.
what's your view to such startup founders? Because some of them really want to pursue it, but they're nervous about it.
Okay, so what I would say is that, especially in the well-being space, and you said it absolutely well, um, and not a lot of people are willing to back you, because again, this is not something that is tangible, right? A lot of the work that goes on in mental health is not tangible. So unless you're able to show a tangible product, people are a little reluctant to put money behind it. So I would say that unless you're truly passionate about this well-being initiative that you want to start, this well-being company that you want to start, unless you're absolutely passionate and it is something that you strongly have seen either in your own circle or in, like, your close by community, a need for this. You don't have to solve world hunger. If you're solving a real problem and you're passionate about solving that real problem for even just a small demographic, it's totally worth it, because at some point people will see the value that you're bringing to the table and they will back you.
Good. Lovely. And what's your view about the whole startup community getting too stressed about the whole idea about, hey, I need investments, investors should come in. And when they have the investors, the problem is the other way around as to how do I deal with the investors or how do I provide them an exit? So what's your recommendation to that kind of an emotion, which is more skewed towards either gaining investor, managing investors, or exiting investors?
So the way we like to think about investors is not kind of like, oh, they're giving me money and I need to give them a return. We kind of like to think of them as partners invested in our company's growth, right? So just that change in perspective helps you think differently in how to respond to those stresses that come about. So if you are truly thinking about them as partners who are help driving your company towards growth, and not kind of just like standing with the whip trying to push you to achieve those goals, then you begin to build a lot of how do I put this? You're not detracting from the game at hand, right? You begin to actually focus on things that are truly important. Investors are important, but your company's growth is also important.
There is this question that has come in, though it was answered earlier in a most elaborate form, which said, please comment on how mental health professionals can be hired into companies to boost productivity or enhance venture performance, right? Almost like coming as a lead to you. Please do get in touch with Tintisha. She'll be happy to help you. The fact that you really want them to be part of your company itself a good initiation. But over to you, Tintisha, if you'd like to answer that.
Okay. So if your question is how to integrate healthcare professionals into your company, that was the question, right?
Yes.
Okay. I mean,
It was more written like, how can they be hired into companies?
Just like every other position that you would create, right? So now I'm so glad you said that, because all you have to do is create an agency within your own company. When I say agency, I'm talking about mental health specific initiatives, right? So that's the agency I'm talking about. And then just hire for that, just like how you would hire for any other thing, right? So like, for example, if you wanted to be present on social media, you would hire a social media guy, and you would create a department within marketing. The same thing for the mental health initiative as well. As long as you're running an initiative, I don't see why we would
Correct,
have a
correct.
hard time.
If that's a priority for your organization, bring it out openly in terms of your leadership discussions and take a decision that you need it. Okay. And once you've taken a decision, we are there to help. What mindset shifts are necessary for building a startup substantially, not just financially, but mentally and emotionally too? That's a very powerful, could be my favorite one.
So the biggest mindset shift that you need to take is that mental health should not be a back burner issue. It should be a priority, right? So like I mentioned earlier, you should treat it as one of the strategies for your business. So if it is a strategic asset, you're going to do everything that you can to protect it and make sure that it grows, right? So that's the mindset shift that you need to do, because mental health is no longer back burner stuff. It shapes who you are as a founder, which means it's shaping your teams, it's shaping your business, and it's important. So make it a priority. Don't put it on the back burner, is what I would say.
True,
That's the
true.
mindset shift.
As Santisha rightly said, it is very important for startup founders, along with their investors being bought in, to know what are they trying to cause.
Mhm.
And if the answer is that they just want to make sales and make revenue, then there is a big, big, big chance that your startup may or may not go further passionately so. It is important to define the purpose of the organization, align certain core values to it in terms of what is the impact that you're trying to cause and how will you achieve using certain value system, and back it up with some rock solid goals. That this will be the key indicator in terms of the goals, not just financial, but in terms of the impact goals also, that if they happen, you will see, hey, we have done something tangible, right? Exactly, how Tantisha kind of articulated in terms of integrating the whole thing as a part of the system.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm just waiting for the next question. In the meanwhile, the another question which came in advance to us is that the digital burnout that is happening, and more often than not, people get an answer, hey, watch out for the time that you are exposing yourself to, total number of hours that you're exposing yourself to digitally. And we
Right.
are doing this conference call, on digital platform too. What are
Right.
more sensible things that you people should do to avoid digital exposure, overexposure of any kind?
Okay. So I mean, this is fairly an easy question, because uh, a lot of us are always glued to our phones. We're always glued to screens, and unless you mindfully say that, okay, I am not going to look at emails post 7 p.m. today. That's it. I'm just not going to, right? And then it's intentionally setting those boundaries around any digital form, not just emails. It could also be social media. It could just be any sort of screen time. But setting those intentional boundaries and respecting those boundaries are really what's going to help in making sure that you're not being digitally overwhelmed. And another important thing that arises from that is a lot of the stuff that you see, especially on social media, is just like the pretty stuff, the nice stuff. No one's ever going to post the real struggle behind what happens, right? So you begin to question the things that you are actually doing against somebody's polished version that you're going to be seeing in digital media. So I would say just creating intentional boundaries in is literally how you can stop the overwhelm.
Yeah, yeah. My view will be is that in complement to what you just said as boundaries, which is such an important thing, that a more measurable boundary is other than, let's say, a WhatsApp where you're communicating with the customer, for once remove all the unnecessary apps
Right.
from your platform,
Mhm.
from your mobile. And then what you desperately need to be successful, re-log in into them. And I think half of your job will be done with that. That's how I created my boundaries. So thank you so much for bringing the word boundaries. Oh, I just want to let people know that we're not taking any more questions because we're getting into the last 2 minutes of a quick fire round to address some of the questions which were there in the Q&A section. And I request you, Tantisha, you've been very, very brave and very, very good with, succinct answers. But this one are going to be very sharp ones too, as quick
Okay.
answers, right?
I'll
So
try. I'll try.
kindly allow, me that liberty to ask in that format too.
Mhm.
How does one come to know that they need help?
Again, you experience no joy in anything anymore.
Good. Some feel bad to discuss their inability to communicate their mental instability.
Mhm. Yes,
What
they
do
do.
they need to do?
because there's that stigma, right? That's why people feel bad about asking those questions, saying that I need help. So just remove that stigma, make it easy to access mental health for everyone, not just for you.
So removing stigma and believing that it's normal to talk
Yeah.
about if you're struggling. If
Yeah.
you're hungry, you ask for food.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So if you're
Just
struggling, you ask
normalizing
for help.
conversation around mental health is what's needed.
Good. How do you address potential medico-legal cases over the helping journey? I'll probably avoid it, given the lack of the scope for this conversation. When we speak of resilience, it also implies persistence. And as a founder yourself, Tintisha, how would you guide another founder who's staring at failure, or in the very words, come to acceptance that this is it, you need to quit or step back?
So again, I would say support groups, right? Founder circle is what I'm talking about. Just understanding that it's not just you, it is not your personal failure. It is sort of a string of events that led to it. It's not a personal failure. That really helps in setting the perspective, right?
Yeah. What's failed today in your context may be successful somewhere else.
Exactly.
What has failed today may be a big success tomorrow. It happens to movies all the time.
Exactly.
It is not a personal failure, right? The movies which flopped in 70s, 80s, and 60s, if they are rewatched sometime, they're super successful, right? And for goddamn sake, stop believing in the fact, log kya kahenge.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Next one, emotional intelligence is also very important in today's materialistic life we live in today. Okay, I don't think so that's a question. There's probably a person reflecting while they're talking the card, but thank you so much for raising. Yeah, thank you so much. It is definitely more important than intellectual intelligence in my mind, right? Could you list some founder support groups only? Thank you. That'll be very biased towards certain founder groups, right? But I can highly recommend that there is a strong community of startup founders within CII too. There are various councils also. So please reach out to the My CII app or reach out to the CII office, and they will be able to recommend some. Alternatively, you can go on to social media and check for various groups. There are startup founders in every city, right? But still, would you want to give a take at that, Dintisha?
No, I think you pretty much addressed it.
You benefited from?
I think you pretty much addressed exactly right. So we actually benefited a lot by communicating with founders from our investors peer group, and that really helped us a lot. So really just reach out to your circle and then see what works best.
Good, thank you. So we're sharp on time, and thank you so much being an absolutely stunner of a rock star, Tintisha. I couldn't have asked for anything better than this. Really, I mean that. Any parting note for our lovely audience?
Absolutely. Something that I want to stress for all of our audience is that, see, you are building something amazing, but you are not your startup. You need to protect the builder, not just the build. That's really what I want to leave the thought with you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Tintisha, for being an absolutely fantastic and rock star of a panelist. You've definitely made my evening. I'm sure the lovely listeners are saying that too. Have the best of the rest of the day and the life ahead. Look forward to stay connected to you.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone.